Hey y'all, I'm Lisa, that fun, eccentric Texas gal, and this is my channel, She Raven, where I talk about true crime, horror, anything spooky. I'm a huge mental health advocate, so I talk about mental health sometimes and just my journey with mental health, or just journeys in general, or motivational quotes, and basically just a little bit of everything. So if any of that interests you, please go ahead and like and subscribe. I'm getting right back into my podcast game, and I'm going to do a small podcast tonight on the Gettysburg Orphanage. Haven't done a podcast in a hot minute, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump right back into that. I've got the kids home. It's Sunday, so the kids are home, and I can sort of hear my daughter's music. I hope you can't hear it. I've told her like 3 times to turn that music down. So she's listening to some Spanish music right now. You know, she just loves all kinds of music. So yeah, I probably should have recorded this tomorrow, but I'm gonna still go ahead and get with it. And like I said, I hope she does not come in here. I hope my son doesn't come in here. I've got my lights down low. I'm getting, like I said, back into the podcasting scene. So I'm making it a little bit spooky. Um, well, it's not spooky if my lights are down low, but I have my lights down low. It's just more comfortable for me this way right now, because most of the time I have the lights on. So I've got the lights down low, and if you want, you can grab a drink, you can turn your lights down low also, and let's go ahead and talk a little bit. Let's talk about the Gettysburg Homestead Orphanage. I went ahead and did all my research, and let's get this party started. So yeah, this one right here is going to qualify as both a true crime and paranormal story, because it's a little bit of both. And as we get a little bit more into the story, you'll see why. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting story. So the Gettysburg Homestead Orphanage is one of the most haunted structures in Gettysburg. There's all types of high level paranormal activity that is associated with the orphanage. It's no longer an orphanage, obviously. It's a museum right now, but there's a lot of paranormal activity that is just in that whole entire area, because there's just a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of sadness and just horrific things that have just happened in that whole area. And as we know, that just makes certain places paranormal hot spots. So, like I said, there was a lot of turmoil during that time. So many people died with the American Civil War that was through Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and that's what that energy. That's what contributes to it being such a paranormal hotspot. Um, at least that's what I've learned a long time ago. That's what they say. They say that when there's significant energy deposited into areas, that's usually what associates with the paranormal. And you have empaths and others that are just really sensitive to the different vibrations throughout life. And those are the people that sometimes, the psychics and things like that pick up on this energy and can translate maybe what's going on. I actually met a girl. Let's see, I've lived in Texas for about 16 years, and she wasn't a girl. I have a habit of doing that. I like saying girl, and it's actually a woman. At that time, we were in our 20s, the good old days. But I actually met a woman, and I do not know how true this is, but she did tell me that she saw dead people, and she did tell me she could pick up on paranormal activities and things like that. Again, I didn't question her, I wasn't quizzing her, anything like that, but she did. I took a class with her, and it was actually a wedding planning class. It was a wedding planning class. We took it together, or a wedding planning course, I should say, because it wasn't just one class. And during that time, we became friends, and she just sort of trusted me with that information after a while. And she sort of just told me that. Yeah, and she said, she said she could see them, all the time. She said, the energies associated with whatever happened, or just whatever the reason was. She's like, there could be dead people walking around, we could be having a conversation. And I would see her kind of look off sometimes. And occasionally I might say, well, what are you looking at? Or, and she'll say, you don't even want to know. so, so yeah. So yeah, I was in the wedding planning business before. I was in the wedding planning business. Yeah. I've actually married people, lots of people, and I can marry you. So if you're looking for someone to marry you, I can actually still marry people. But yeah, I was in all parts of it. But anyways, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You see, my mind goes all over the place, all over the place. So yeah, I'm talking about the paranormal. And the energies associated with it. And, that's really something that I've actually spoken to my son about before, because my son, he's small and, or he's still young, I should say. And, he's asked me before, about ghosts. And I remember once telling him, babe, the whole world is filled with ghosts if you look at it from that aspect. If you look at all of the different wars, all of the different, natural causes, if you consider just life, people die. People have died everywhere doing everything. I mean, it's just literally one big walking around ghost pot. So I think, I'm not sure, but I think at that point he kind of thought to himself, she might have something there. And at that time we were actually in Louisiana, and we were getting ready to go see one of the plantations. And I was explaining to him, especially where we're at right now in Louisiana, where they've tortured and killed so many African Americans, and just variety of things and places and people. When you really, really, really think about it that way, you realize literally every single nook and cranny on the whole entire earth, if you're thinking, there's ghosts coming out, would be filled with negative energies, would be filled with these ghosts, things of that nature. What else? Like I went to the birthplace of Texas a couple weeks ago, and I know that it's slipping my mind right now. I know that from there, goodness, slipping my mind exactly where that is located. I want to say Brazos, but it's not the Brazos. I know that they finally won against Mexico in La Porte, which is not too far from me, because that's where it was finished. I have it like right in my head. I know it's out there in it's near Chapel Hill, in the Chapel Hill, Texas area. Goodness, as soon as I get off, I'm going to remember. But anyways, so it's over there in the Chapel Hill area, and that's the birthplace. And at one point, the troops traveled to La Porte, and that would be here where I am. So by car, it's about from where I am right now to where the monument was, the birthplace monument, is about a good hour and 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours. So think about back in that time. It's much longer than that, and you've got troops that are walking, that are dying, that are just dying from just natural causes possibly. And then prior to that, you had the Alamo, where they fought in the Alamo. That's where the whole big Remember the Alamo comes from. So, you think about the Alamo, and the Alamo from that location is about another 2 hours or so. So, you just think about life, and when you think about it in that way, and you think about the battles and stuff, you think literally every single inch, or very close to every single inch, people have died. They've perished. So basically the whole world is just one big ghost pot. But, most people don't think about it that way. Most people usually just remember certain instances. And like in this case, this is the orphanage. But there's a lot of instances that we don't even know about. But let's go ahead and let's get back to that. So like I said, the orphanage is a huge paranormal hotspot. That whole area, there are different portions of that area that are paranormal hotspots, basically because of the war. So many people lost their lives during this war. And this orphanage was actually built right there. So the the area is basically haunted by the spirits of the people who died during the battle. The Gettysburg Children's Orphanage, like most things in life, takes on a more sinister turn. The orphanage is there because of the war, but the deaths that happened, war is not only affecting the adults that are in the war, but at this time, the men went off to war and the women would stay home and things like that. And it affects all parts. It affects all parts of the family experience. That's what I'm looking to say. But it's not just the destruction of the war. In this particular case, it's the destruction of humanity, the evil that is within ourselves, and in this case the evil that was within this one particular mistress mattress this head mattress. I'm just kidding, mistress. So, I believe, and I've always believed this, and I kind of made a note of this. I believe that some people, they have like a cauldron of bubbling hate and evil that just ferments in them. I mean, have you ever met someone like that? Like, on the outside, they appear to be normal, but they are evil. Like, make no doubt about it. They might fool people, but they're evil. They're nasty people, and I believe that it's like, it's just this fermenting hate that is in their souls. And every time, like you watch the shows and as it's bubbling up, this potion, this big potion that the witches brew, so to speak, and every time it bubbles up, it creates this path of destruction and sadness. It bubbles over and it kills the grass, or it kills, the pretty butterflies or the pretty flowers. And some people are like that. Some people are like the movies where, the witch, the monster, or the demon, everything they touch is destroyed. There are a lot of people, today that are like that. And, nothing good comes from these types of people. And, their legacy and their mark on life, even though sometimes they would probably want to say that they're good, but their legacy is going to be that of the pain that they've caused and the hate that they've done, and the little evil plants that they've seeded. And like I said, it's not where when they touch something it turns to gold, but in fact it's where they touch something and it turns to hate, and it shrivels and it dies. There's a lot of people that are like that. So yeah, so that right there kind of leads us right into the story of the Gettysburg Children's Orphanage. And like I said, obviously war leaves any town in complete destruction. The town of Gettysburg was no exception to that. Homes were destroyed, bodies of the dead and dying scattered about. Imagine that, so much pain and death and dying, and you can't recover. There's not enough resources to get to everyone in a timely manner. So there are bodies dying. There are people that are lying around and dying. And because of this destruction of homes, families, and basically communities, tragically, it created devastating losses for even children, wives and children. And, they became orphans. So war destroys families. Not only do they kill the parents, the parent that is a part of the war, like I was saying before, in this case, it would have been, the men go off to war, but a lot of times it can destroy the root system of the family, and a lot of times it's the woman, who, and not always, but a lot of times it's the woman that's that root system of the family that's holding it down. And right now, a lot of the moms, were the roots. They were trying to hold it down. And sometimes what would happen is they would become overwhelmed and they may not be able to properly function or properly provide for the children. So the father might have died in war, but also it sort of killed that family structure. If the woman is the root, then the father is probably the heart or the brain, and it messes up that family structure. The woman, some women were not able to properly move past that and take care of their children. So those children additionally became orphans that way also. Because of the ripple effects of the Civil War and the Battle of Gettysburg, they needed a children's orphanage to take care of the needs of those displaced children. The Battle of Gettysburg resulted in about 50,000 deaths. That's a lot, a lot. And it happened July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. And it was considered one of the bloodiest battles to occur on American soil. So we've already discussed how everyone falls victim to the consequences of war. And as a result, remember, it took about 50,000 victims. But those were the victims. And there's that ripple effect of losing your husband and possibly not being able to function. Even just losing a spouse, that's hard enough. But some people have lost their spouse. They might have lost, their brothers and, uncles, just whatever. So that ripple effect, trickled down to the most vulnerable, which is the children. So the National Homestead Orphanage was created. So it was originally the Homestead Orphanage. The orphanage was built right where the Battle of Gettysburg took place. Not sure why they did that, but they literally built the orphanage right there. Think about that for a second. You've lost your loved ones. There's just incredible devastation. That would have been devastation that eventually would have had to be cleaned up. You can't stay there forever, but that is the spot. That's the spot you're going to build your orphanage on. I'm not sure if that was the best decision, but that's what they did. They went ahead and they did that right there. And then, they wanted it to be the safe haven for, the displaced children. Well, come on, how is it going to be a safe haven if you're building it right where, this child's father has possibly died, this child's uncle possibly died. But, that's what happened, and I'm sure maybe they weren't thinking of it in that way. They probably were thinking, we're going to give this land a new life, breathe new life into it. So, yeah. So that right there was supposed to be a safe haven, and unfortunately it turned to basically a place of nightmares for these children that had already lost so much, and they were going to continue to lose more being there. So they did have an original mistress. I want to say it again, headmistress. That's what happens when you keep saying a word wrong on purpose. Then you can't say it right again. But they did originally have a headmistress, and over time, and actually her husband was like an inspiration for the orphanage, because he was found passed away. He had expired, and in his hand he had this like photo, and old time photo, and on the photo was his kids. So yeah, but they hired her on. She became the first headmistress, and eventually she did, remarry and move on. So the horror actually started with the second headmistress, and her name was Rosa Carmichael. She took over, and like I said earlier, some people are walking cauldrons of evil, and she was definitely a very nasty woman. This is a perfect description of her, just a embodiment of hate, evil, an embodiment of someone who just has the most demonic personality about them. And let's go ahead and learn about that a little bit. Miss Carmichael enjoyed corporal punishment, harsh corporal punishment that was basically torture. These are kids. These are little kids. So any type of harsh punishment is torture for them. She made the basement of the orphanage, into a torture chamber, and she used it as basically like the main location for her punishments. So, starting around 1873, rumors started about Mrs. Carmichael, and basically people started talking about the children being abused. So, there's just little chatter around at that time about the children and the way that she treated the children. June 11th, 1876, Miss Carmichael was arrested on a cruelty warrant concerning one of the orphans. She was held at $300 and indicted on 3 counts of aggravated assault and battery. She was found guilty on one of the counts and fined $20 plus court costs and sent back to the orphanage. At that time, I don't think really people understood child abuse, and I would probably want to say that that probably wasn't even like a word or a thing or a definition at that time. I know like the child abuse term and like really understanding it came on much later, and I'm gonna actually look that up, because I actually have a story of a friend who told me some like horrific things, and she also told me, and she's my age, like people weren't really like child abuse, just, yeah, anyways. So she was fined $20 and actually sent back. So, yeah. There was one time she locked a 4 or 5-year-old boy in the outhouse at night, and he was only rescued when 2 men passing by at midnight heard his screams. So, you think to yourself, okay, well, that's not that bad. She locks him in the outhouse, but it's being locked in the outhouse as a punishment, and more than likely, if he's 4 or 5, he's terrified of the dark. He's out there, he's probably hearing all kinds of noises, hearing animals, go by. This is not, it's not today's world. Even today's world, I think if I were to lock my son outside as a punishment, he'd be freaked smooth out. So anyways, she beat the children. She locked them in their rooms. Their hygiene was poor. They were dirty. Sometimes they had no shoes. She didn't feed them properly. There's an account of her making a little girl stand up on a desk in a particular position for hours as a punishment. She forced these 2 girls to wear boys' clothing, and that doesn't seem that harsh. But again, back in that time, that's a huge insult. These are little girls, and she's probably also spewing hateful words at them and slurs and I mean, God only knows. I mean, seriously, God only knows. Miss Carmichael had this dungeon, like I said, that she created in the basement, and she'd put, according to her, the worst children in there. She'd chain them to the wall. So she'd actually chain children to the wall as punishment. She would beat them, abuse them, and just lock them in there. And also there was this little corridor in the basement, and the children would walk down there. So imagine the basement. Imagine the dark, dirty, scary, spooky basement. And imagine walking down a corridor and being led to the back, and there was like a little section where she could open the door and stick them in this little dark room. And imagine being stuck in that dark room, and the door basically slammed on you, and you were stuck in there for however long she wanted you to be stuck in there. I can't even imagine that. I'm serious. Like, I cannot even imagine that. I remember I was looking at a home, and this was recently. It was a couple months ago. I was looking at a home, and I don't know how long that home was empty, but I remember asking the realtor. I was like, "My God, this place is like really dirty." And I was like, you guys got to clean this up before you show this to someone, because it was really dirty and there was a lot of spiders. I was like, there's a lot of spiders in here. And this house had a garage, a separated garage, and they had added an addition to the top of the garage. So you had some stairs, and there were spiders everywhere. And I remember telling her, like, I can't go up there. I was like, I'm so scared right now. I was like, I don't even have like a massive fear of spiders, but I was like, this is like arachnophobia. This is too much for me. I mean, even for me as a grown woman, I was horrified. So I can't imagine, these children being put in a locked dungeon. There's obviously going to be rats in there. It's dark. You're just locking them away. Rats, spiders, God knows what else. These things are probably nibbling at them, biting at them. You're beating them. You're not feeding them. You're chaining them. You're torturing them. It's too much. It's really too much to even think about. Also, as a punishment, sometimes she would tie the children to the fences and leave them there. The fences outside. She'd tie them to the fences and just basically leave them there in the elements, leave them out there in the hot or whatever. So any type of cruel physical punishment was done to those children. At some point, Miss Carmichael also hired a young male assistant, and he was known as Stick Boy. He was a teenage boy, and he was known as Stick Boy. Okay. Stick Boy had a stick, and he would use it to beat the children. Okay. He also used the stick to poke the children, trip them. The stick was basically his main torture tools, what he used the majority of the time to inflict his abuse. So you think about this teenage kid, and you think about the headmistress who has hired him. So he's hired to do this, and it may come off as seeming like, oh, okay, he poked the kids. But if you're hired by someone evil, you're committing the same type of atrocities on that same level. Because, the accounts don't say that, Stick Boy, would try to sometimes show kindness or love them or, be gentle with them. He's using it to poke them. So I'm sure that's like those harsh pokes and smack them and hit them. And all of this obviously was with the blessing of his boss, the headmistress. So yeah, so he was Stick Boy. So in addition to using the sticks to beat the children, he'd also stick them in barrels of freezing cold water. So that was like a torture he did to them, and he'd like make them stay there until he decided, they could come out of this cold water, the barrels of water that they would have. And like I said, all of this was done with the blessing of the headmistress, his boss, because he's not an orphan there. He is a worker. She hired him. So this is all done with the blessing of his boss. So finally in 1877, Miss Carmichael is dismissed from the orphanage. This is after many investigations and rumors and things like that are swirling around. And she had to go to court. She paid a fine of $20 and was forced out of town. So that was it. $20 and get out of this town. We think something's wrong. There's too many little issues that are happening with you. Pay this $20 and go. And of course at that time, $20, that's some money. That's a fine. But still, it's not a fine that is suitable for the atrocities that she's done, and the pain and the destruction of life that she's done. Because even when you think about, I know I did a podcast a little while ago. I don't know if I have. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember the name. The Dozer School for boys. even those who are able to get away from that situation, or the survivors, I should say, even though there are survivors from those kinds of situations, a lot of them are messed up because of the abuse that they've suffered during that time frame, during that reign. So, you know, her $20 is a lot, but it's nothing compared to the harm that she's done. And even at that point, even when she was forced out of town, by that time there were a lot of missing children. It just, like I said, I don't think child abuse was like a word and like a defined um, word at that time. There were a lot of missing children that were never seen or heard from again. It was just like, we don't know. And I mean, I'm sure she didn't offer any help. She probably said they ran away or something like that. So obviously, I couldn't find any concrete evidence that those children were killed. But these again are little children. So where do little missing children go? So that's just it's important to note also. So after Mrs. Carmichael was forced out of town, the remaining children were removed from the orphanage and it was closed down. The building is currently a war museum, a Civil War museum. There are tours that go through there daily, and many people have paranormal sightings and experiences at the location. So a lot of people talk about the sightings and the different paranormal situations that they have at the location. And like I said, that the whole entire area is a real active hotspot for paranormal activity based on all of the horrible deaths and additional atrocities that have happened there. Some people have reports of children ghosts that appear and vanish. So some people, as they're going through and they're touring, they'll say that they see, a child, and that child will vanish, or they'll see a child, from the corner of their eyes or in a corner or something, and that child will vanish. Some people have taken pictures, and in the pictures there are orbs that are floating around, once they develop the pictures. Mist, sometimes some people have said that they've had mist that suddenly appears out of nowhere. People have seen faces of children appearing in the pictures that they've taken. And some people have actually, like I said, seen children or faces, and they kind of vanish. There are cold spots. Some people have said that, as they're walking through, they feel like little shivers, they feel cold spots. Some people have felt sicknesses as they walk through certain parts, and or they experience like a nasty smell, like a pungent type of smell that just comes out of nowhere and eventually leaves as quickly as it came. There have been broken toys or moved toys, moved objects there. And some people have even said that they've had, like a sensation of being pinched or poked. So, yeah. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of paranormal activity that that happens there. And, a lot of people believe that the spirits are trapped there. And, when you think about the history of the orphanage, when you think about the history of the land, in addition to the orphanage, I can really, understand how they can have those types of experiences because, Miss Carmichael was headmistress of that orphanage for 9 years. And during that time, she was just, she was evil. She was horrific, just horrible. The abuse that she put those children through. And then again, on top of that, being right where the war took place and where so many people died, there's no wonder there's a huge amount of paranormal activity there, and people are just, experiencing that. So that is definitely a tragedy. And I don't believe she should have gotten away with a $20 fine. And I hope that, eventually the souls of those kids can, can find some peace. And that's really not something I think I understand that much about. And, I would like to understand a little bit more about the theory behind that, the theory about why a soul would want to continuously haunt one location. I personally would want to just, move on. Yeah, I'd like to know the theory behind that. But anyways, the Gettysburg Homestead Orphanage, that's a good one. That's a really big one. And that's it for now. So I'm working on something else. I'm working on another podcast for a little bit later. I think I'll go ahead and I'll, record that in a couple days. And yeah, thanks for joining me, and I will talk to you guys later. Like I said, it is Sunday night tonight. I more than likely will upload this on Monday. I'm getting kind of tired. It's like 9:22. I'm such a lightweight. I'm like ready to go to bed. I'm getting kind of tired, so I'll probably upload this tomorrow, which will be Monday. And I hope you guys have a good week. Bye, y'all.